I knew something was wrong before I even walked into the house. Usually I threw my keys on the table, loosened my tie, and allowed myself a few minutes of peaceful rest after work. But this evening was different. The air in the apartment seemed heavier, like before a thunderstorm. Everything looked normal, but there was something elusively wrong. She was standing in the kitchen. Her back was to me. A glass of wine in her hands, an open bottle on the table. I froze in the doorway, feeling anxiety growing inside. "We need to talk," she said. I tensed up inside. That phrase never boded well. "About what?" She turned to me. There was cold indifference in her eyes. No pain, no anger. Just tired detachment. "You have to earn my love." I blinked. "What?" "I don't feel the way I used to," she said, her voice emotionless, like she was giving the weather forecast. "I need more. If you want things to stay the way they were, you're going to have to work harder." She said it calmly, like she was talking about something mundane. Like she was just adding a new chore to her shopping list, taking out the trash, buying milk, earning her love. I looked at her, trying to figure out if she was joking or not. She wasn't. "Are you serious?" There was tension in her voice. "Absolutely." She tilted her head, watching my reaction. I should have been angry, outraged, arguing, but something inside me snapped. I didn't have to fight. I wasn't going to play this game. I nodded slowly. "Okay." Her eyebrows twitched slightly as if this answer surprised her. She was expecting protests, arguments, maybe even attempts to convince her. But I gave her exactly what she didn't expect. And from that moment on, everything started to change. I didn't argue. I didn't try to convince her. I didn't beg. I just watched. In the first few days, she mentioned it casually, checking to see if it would hurt me. "You used to be more romantic," she said at breakfast, putting berries on a plate as if it had any meaning. I shrugged. She began to emphasize how other men made their women happy. A friend's boyfriend arranged an unexpected weekend for her. Can you imagine how romantic it was? I nodded and changed the subject. I could see her irritation. It was growing. She needed me to prove my love, to make me feel guilty, to break down. But I didn't prove anything. She began to test the boundaries. She dressed especially impressively, even if she was just going to the store. She stayed longer in front of the mirror. "I don't know when I'll be back," she said before leaving again. "Have a nice evening," I replied, not looking up from my book. I noticed a flicker of irritation on her face. The script wasn't working. I knew she was waiting for me to start getting jealous, to start asking where she'd been, with whom, to start doubting. But I kept quiet. And then she moved on to the next step. One night, I woke up to the sound of her phone. She quickly turned it face down and stood up, not looking at me. I stayed lying there, watching her leave the bedroom. A few minutes later, I heard a quiet voice. She was speaking in a whisper. I could have gotten up, moved closer, trying to hear. But I knew the truth, and there was no point in checking it. I rolled over and closed my eyes. She returned 10 minutes later. I didn't move. She lay down next to me, but her breathing was ragged. She waited for me to ask, but I was silent. The morning was cold. I woke up before she did. For a while I just lay there, looking at the ceiling, listening to her breathing. It was even, but the barely noticeable tension in her body betrayed that she had not slept. I turned to her and, as if casually, calmly asked, "Who called last night?" She shuddered. Only for a split second. But I noticed. "What?" she asked again without opening her eyes. "You got a call last night. You got up and went into another room. Who was it?" She held her breath. "Just spam." The answer was too fast. I looked at her, studying her face. She still hadn't opened her eyes, but I could see the muscles in her neck tense slightly. Spam that needs to be discussed at 2 in the morning? Now she opened her eyes. Her gaze was wary, but she quickly pulled herself together. "I was just checking my phone and accidentally opened an old chat." I answered. "That's all." And went into another room. "I didn't want to wake you up." A simple explanation. A simple, everyday thing. But her voice. Too even. Too rehearsed. I nodded slowly. "I see." She waited for me to continue. That I would ask whose old chat it was. That I would start finding out the details. But I didn't. I just got out of bed and went to the shower. And I knew that I drove her crazy with it. She was tense all day. At breakfast, she was fiddling with her spoon, barely touching her food. A couple of times she wanted to say something but changed her mind. I acted like usual. Talked to her as if nothing had happened. And it pissed her off. I saw the irritation flash in her eyes when I didn't bring it up. When I didn't sort things out. When I didn't play her game. And then, I noticed another emotion. Anxiety. She was waiting for me to lose my temper. for me to show weakness. But I didn't let her, and she started to panic. In the evening, she came up to me herself. "You're acting strange." "What do you mean?" "You seem to suspect something." I chuckled. "Should I?" She was confused for a second, then shook her head. "No, you're just kind of cold." I looked into her eyes and said calmly, "And you're nervous." She turned pale. "What made you think that?" I shrugged. "I just noticed." She wanted to say something, but changed her mind. Instead, she silently turned away and went into the bedroom. But I knew she wouldn't sleep that night. I felt something breaking inside her. And that was just the beginning. The next day she changed. Something broke inside her. But instead of trying to smooth things over, she took a step in the other direction. She no longer seemed nervous. Now her movements became relaxed, even frivolous. It was as if she was deliberately emphasizing her confidence, predatory femininity, independence. I immediately realized that this was a new tactic. She decided to make me jealous. But she didn't understand one thing. I was no longer who I had been before. I was no longer playing her game. On Friday evening, I returned home and saw her in front of the mirror. She was getting ready to go somewhere. A black dress with an open back. High-heeled shoes. Red lipstick. I watched her fix her hair, as if I wasn't there at all. Then, as if by chance, she said, "I'm going out with the girls today." I nodded. "Okay." She froze for a second, as if expecting a different reaction. "Will you be back late?" I added, to give her a chance to tell the truth. She looked at me through the mirror. "I don't know. Maybe I'll stay at Laura's." "Laura." "Sure." I calmly took out my phone, found Laura's contact information and dialed the number. My wife winced. I pressed the phone to my ear. Beeps. 1, 2, 3. "Hello? Laura, hi. It's me, Tom." "Oh, Tom. Hi. What happened?" "Nothing. Sarah just said she might be staying at yours. I wanted to check if everything was still on track." A short pause. Then Laura said, She didn't tell me anything." I silently looked at my wife. Her face froze. Laura continued, "The girls and I were planning to meet up, but nothing serious." "That's weird." I smiled, although my insides went cold. "Maybe she hasn't decided yet." "Thanks, Laura." "Of course." I hung up. The room went silent. My wife swallowed, but tried to pull herself together. Maybe I'll change my mind. We were just discussing the option." "Really?" I sat down on the couch, clasping my fingers together. "Or are you lying?" "Tom, I'm a grown man. I don't have to answer to you." "You didn't answer the question." "What difference does it make?" She flared up. "You act like I have no right to privacy." I nodded. "I understand." She expected a confrontation. Expected me to yell, blame her, make a scene. But I just stood up, threw on my jacket, and grabbed my keys. "Where are you going?" she asked, frowning. "To the bar. For a drink." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "With whom?" I smiled. "What difference does it make?" And I walked out, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The bar was nearby. I didn't go there often, but today I just wanted to sit at the counter, have a glass of whiskey, and think. However, fate decreed otherwise. I had just ordered a drink when someone sat down next to me. "Tom?" I turned around. A tall guy, a firm handshake, a confident smile. "Hey, Mark." I forced myself to smile, although everything inside was tense. Mark, Laura's boyfriend. Coincidence? Possibly. But judging by his expression, he knew something I didn't. "Long time no see," he said, taking a sip of beer. "How are you?" "Fine. And you?" "Not bad either." True, Laura ran off somewhere today. Said she was going to meet her friends. But apparently without me. I looked at him silently. He thoughtfully twirled the bottle of beer in his hands. "By the way, where is yours?" I exhaled. "She said she was with her friends too." Well, he chuckled. We both knew what they were talking about, but neither of us had said it yet. Instead, he finished his beer and put the bottle on the counter. "Do you want to check?" I looked at him, There was no pity or sympathy in his eyes. Only cold, almost predatory interest. I finished my whiskey and put the glass next to his bottle. Yes, and at that moment I realized, in an hour my life would no longer be the same. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to burst into her lies like a character from a cheap sitcom and shout, "Gotcha!" No, I wanted to do it differently. I wanted her to get confused herself, to destroy her own false reality, so that the truth would destroy her from the inside. But to do that, I needed to know everything. Mark was trying to convince me to go right now, check her out, catch her in the act. But I shook my head. No, I said. I'd rather give her a little more rope. He frowned. Are you serious? Do you want to wait? No, I want to be in control. Mark shrugged, though I could see he didn't fully understand my plan. But I didn't care. I knew what I was doing. When I got home, she wasn't there yet. And I used that moment. I knew her password. It was simple, her birthday. She had always been sure that I wouldn't go through her phone. But now I had no reason to hold back. I unlocked the screen and opened her messenger. The first thing I noticed was the cleared chats. But I was no fool. I opened the backup copies of the messages. And saw it all. I don't know how much longer I can hide this. He's suspicious. Relax, baby. He's just boring. He wouldn't even think you'd do something like that. And if he finds out, then he'll have to accept it. Or leave. The next messages were worse. Photos. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself not to break. I couldn't let myself break. Not now. That phone had enough information to destroy her life. But I needed more. I needed her to start destroying herself. I closed the phone and put it back. Now the game was on. She returned after midnight. There were still traces of the lipstick on her lips. There was caution in her eyes. I sat on the couch, holding a glass of whiskey in my hand. Have a good evening? I asked, taking a sip. She hesitated. Yeah, we had a great time. At Laura's? She tensed up. Yeah. That's funny, I chuckled. And Laura said she didn't know you were coming. Silence. Her fingers clenched into a fist. You called Laura? Of course. Is that weird? She tried to pull herself together. I probably just didn't express myself correctly. We were together, but then I went home. Sure, I nodded. I made her feel like she'd gotten out of it. Gave her hope. But that night I knew she wasn't sleeping. I could hear her tossing and turning. Her mind was working at full speed, trying to figure out how much I knew. And here's the interesting thing. She couldn't ask. She couldn't find out directly because then she'd have to admit there was something to find out. She was trapped. The next day I made my next move. I left her phone open. On purpose. Unlocked. On the screen, her own messages. I wanted her to see. I wanted her to feel fear. And it worked. When I got out of the shower, the phone was already turned face down. I pretended not to notice. She was sitting on the bed, pale, clutching the corner of the pillow. Tom. Yes? Everything is okay? I smiled. Of course. She didn't know what to do. I saw how her mind was frantically searching for a way out. Do you love me? She asked unexpectedly. And you? I raised my eyebrows. She looked away. I nodded slowly. I thought so. And I left the room. I left her alone. Alone with her fear. And now all I could do was wait. She would break. She would make a mistake. She would give herself away. I just waited. And that moment was closer than I thought. She held out for 2 days. 2 days of pretense. 2 days of feigned confidence. But I could see how everything inside her was crumbling. She became quieter. More careful. For the first time in a long time, she didn't check her phone every 5 minutes. Her fingers no longer slid across the screen automatically. Now she looked at it with anxiety as if it could explode at any moment. I didn't do anything. I didn't make a scene. I didn't ask. I didn't attack. I just waited. And in the end, she broke. In the evening, when I was about to go to bed, she came up to me and hesitantly sat on the edge of the bed. Tom. I put the book down and looked at her. She was pale. Her eyes darted, her lips trembled nervously. I was silent. She clasped her hands together. Her voice trembled. She swallowed and began again. I want to tell you something. I'm listening. She hesitated for a long time. I gave her this time. Let her suffer. Let the words come to her through force. She took a deep breath. I made a mistake. I nodded slowly. What was it? She bit her lip. I saw that she wanted to dodge, to smooth things over. But I looked straight into her eyes. And she understood. I would not let her avoid answering. She closed her eyes and exhaled. I had someone. I didn't react. No surprise, no anger, no pain. Just silence. She waited for me to say something. But I remained silent. It was insignificant, she added quickly. Just flirting. A few dates. I nodded again. You mean you didn't cross the line? She looked away. I didn't, she fell silent. Then barely audibly, she added, I did. Silence. She couldn't hide the truth any longer. But I didn't give her a single emotion. That was what scared her the most. Tom, her voice became quieter. Are you going to say something? I looked at her and said calmly, almost indifferently. What do you want to hear? She blinked, clearly not expecting such an answer. I don't know. Do you want me to forgive you? She was silent. Or do you want me to make a scene? Start screaming, punching the wall? She bit her lip. I nodded slowly. Do you think you deserve forgiveness? She didn't answer. I saw tears in her eyes, but I didn't care. I didn't feel pain anymore. Who is he? I asked. She clenched her fists. It doesn't matter. It does matter to me. She took a deep breath. No one special. Just a guy from the gym. I closed my eyes. I knew she was lying. I knew who he really was. But I didn't correct her. I wanted her to think that I believed it. Let her believe it. Let her live with it. She tried to justify herself. She said it was a mistake. That it was over. But I wasn't listening anymore. I just stood up, walked over to the dresser and took out my bag. She held her breath. What are you doing? Leaving. She jumped up from the bed. Wait. Tom, I confessed. I wanted to fix everything. I smiled. No, Sarah. You confessed because I cornered you. She froze. Her lips trembled. Tom. I don't want things to be like this between us. I turned around slowly. Like this? She swallowed. Like you don't care. I exhaled. Maybe because I really do. She winced. I zipped up my bag without a word. She didn't stop me. She just stood there as if she knew something inevitable was happening. When I was at the door, she whispered. So, that's it? I turned to her. Yes. I opened the door. Before, I would have looked back. I would have looked for regret in her eyes. But now I just walked out. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders that I didn't even know I had. Freedom. It was exactly as I imagined it. 6 months passed. I didn't count the days, I didn't wait for her call, I didn't leaf through old photos. It all ended the moment I closed the door behind me. I started a new life. I moved to another city, changed jobs. I found a hobby I'd wanted to do for a long time. I met new people. Sometimes I thought about the past. But without pain, without anger. Just like a chapter of a book that I had already finished reading. I no longer waited for the past to catch up with me. But it did. She found me through social networks. Hi. Can we talk? I stared at this message for a long time. It did not evoke any emotions. I did not answer. A week later, another one. I'm very sorry. I realized everything. Can I just explain? No, I can't. But I was wondering, why? I did not hold a grudge. I was not going to take revenge. I just wanted to put an end to it. So I answered. We met in a cafe. When I saw her, I realized that time had changed us both. She had lost weight. Her eyes were empty, her gaze dull. You look good, she said, forcing a weak smile. You, not so much, I answered honestly. She flinched. I didn't mean to be cruel, but I had nothing to hide. Are you okay? She asked. Okay. She nodded, nervously fiddling with her coffee cup. I just wanted to say that I understand. I was terrible. I don't deserve to be forgiven, but... She fell silent. I looked at her in silence, letting her speak. I thought I'd find something better. Something brighter. But it turned out I just destroyed what was most precious to me. She exhaled. I lost you. And that was my biggest mistake. I picked up my cup and took a sip. Yes, I said calmly. You really did lose me. She looked at me hopefully as if waiting for me to add, but I didn't add anything. I stood up from the table. She looked up. So, that's it? I smiled. It was that's it when I left. I turned around and walked out. This time forever. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next video. If you liked the story, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm show my content more often. If you are new to the channel, do not forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep making more stories for you.